baby. I just want
Oh,
y'all to meet her.
oh,
This is
is that a Maltese?
uh-huh.
Yeah. What's his name? Her name?
Isis.
Isis. Oh,
Yeah,
she's adorable.
I named her before the group Isis, but
Yeah, figured as
named
much.
after yeah, she's named after
Well,
the goddess.
well,
She is a goddess.
I'm I've got an extra dog with me this weekend who can be rather noisy, so I have them in the other room, and hopefully they with the door shut, and hopefully they won't disrupt us.
Well, and when we're not reading, as usual, let's keep ourselves on mute. And I did start the recording. So my name is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and Evolution Revolution, and I'm here with Sarah, Angela Duck, Savannah, Tammy Long, Michelle Harvey, Angela Means, and Carolyn that's on the phone. I think that is. Oh, I think that's it for right now. But anyway, I was saying right before I hit the recording that if you listen to this today or tomorrow, let's all keep Neil in our thoughts and prayers as he goes into surgery on Tuesday. And we'll just all keep good thoughts going his way. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and start reading? Hi,
Sure.
Anne. I'm so glad to see Anne made it here.
Yay.
Anne is the one that we went through a test run today. So I'm really glad you're here. But everybody put yourself on mute while Michelle is reading so we don't have any background noise. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Hi, everyone. You live in a wasteful, decadent society. You've built into virtually everything you make. I'm sorry, I'm hearing interference in my ears. That's kind of disturbing me right now. Okay, it's better. You live in a wasteful, decadent society. You've built into virtually everything you make what your engineers called planned obsolescence. Cars cost 3 times as much and last a third as long. Clothes fall apart after the 10th wearing. You put chemicals in your food so they can stay on the shelf longer, even if it means your stay on the planet is shorter. You support, encourage, and enable sports teams to pay obscene salaries for ridiculous efforts, while teachers, ministers, and researchers fighting to find a cure for the diseases which kill you go begging for money. You throw away more food each day in your nation's supermarkets, restaurants, and homes than it would take to feed half the world. Yet this is not an indictment, merely an observation. And not of the United States alone, for the attitudes that sicken the heart are epidemic around the world. The underprivileged everywhere must grovel and scrimp to merely stay alive, while the few in power protect and increase great hoards of cash, lie on sheets of silk, and each morning twist bathroom fixtures made of gold, and as emaciated children of ribs and skin die in the arms of weeping mothers, their country's leaders engage in political corruptions which keep donated foodstuffs from reaching the starving masses. No one seems to have the power to alter these conditions, yet the truth is, power is not the problem. No one seems to have the will. And thus it will always be, so long as no one sees another's plight as his own. Well, why don't we? How can we see these atrocities daily and allow them to continue? Because you do not care. It is a lack of caring. The entire planet faces a crisis of consciousness. You must decide whether you simply care for each other. It seems such a pathetic question to have to ask. Why can't we love the members of our own family? You do love the members of your own family. You simply have a very limited view of who your family members are. You do not consider yourself part of the human family, and so the problems of the human family are not your own. How can the peoples of the earth change their worldview? That depends on what you want to change it to. How can we eliminate more of the pain, more of the suffering? By eliminating all separations between you, by constructing a new model of the world, by holding it within the framework of a new idea, which is, which is going to be a radical departure from the present worldview. Presently, you see the world, we're speaking geopolitically now, as a collection of nation states, each sovereign, separate, and independent of each other. The internal problems of these independent nation states are, by and large, not considered the problems of the group as a whole, unless and until they affect the group as a whole or the most powerful members of that group. Group as a whole reacts to the conditions and problems of individual states based on the vested interests of the larger group. If no one in the larger group has anything to lose, conditions in an individual state could go to hell, and no one would care much. Thousands can starve to death each year, hundreds can die in civil war, despots can pillage the countryside, dictators and their armed thugs can rape, plunder, and murder, regimes can strip the people of basic human rights, and the rest of you will do nothing. It is, you say, an internal problem. But when your interests are threatened there, when your investments, your security, your quality of life is on the line, you rally your nation and try to rally your world behind you and rush in where angels fear to tread. You then tell the big lie, claiming you are doing what you are doing for humanitarian reasons, to help the oppressed peoples of the world, when the truth is you are simply protecting your own interests. The proof of this is that where you do not have interests, you do not have concern. The world's political machinery operates on self-interest. What else is new? Something will have to be new if you wish your world to change. You must begin to see someone else's interests as your own. This will happen only when you reconstruct your global reality and govern yourselves accordingly. Are you talking about a one-world government? I am. End of chapter 10.
Yep. If anybody has anything they want to say about that, please do so, because it's a very short reading to get a big discussion going on. Okay. The only thing I was going to say is that when I used to work in the restaurant business and people would leave a lot of their dinner on their plate, I would tell them, I would ask them if they wanted to take it to go, but they were staying in a hotel, and I would tell them to take this bag and let me box up the food. And I said, there's a bunch of homeless people that live right nearby, and if you just leave it there, they will happily take that from you. And here in the U.S., it's not really legal to do that because of health issues or health departments, but that is one of the things we do over here. I mean, to help, because believe me, there's a lot of waste in the restaurant industry. Let me see. I lost my... Okay. So does anybody else want to add, or should we keep reading? Thumbs up for keep reading. Okay. Let's go ahead and keep reading. You're on mute, Michelle. Michelle, you're on mute. Michelle.
Yes.
Oh,
Hi.
okay. I was like, no.
I'm really lame at multitasking sometimes when it comes to hands-on stuff. Okay.
No worries.
Chapter 11. You promised that in Book 2, you would get into larger geopolitical issues facing the planet, as opposed to the basically personal issues addressed in Book 1. But I didn't think you would enter into this debate. It is time for the world to stop kidding itself, to wake up, to realize that the only problem of humanity is lack of love. Love breeds tolerance, tolerance breeds peace. Intolerance produces war and looks indifferently upon intolerable conditions. Love cannot be indifferent. It does not know how. The fastest way to get a place of love and concern for all humankind is to see all humankind as your family. The fastest way to see all humankind as your family is to stop separating yourself. Each of the nation states now making up your world must unite. We do have the United Nations, which has been powerless and impotent. In order for that body to work, it would have to be completely restructured. Not impossible, but perhaps difficult and cumbersome. Okay, what do you propose? I don't have a proposal. I merely offer observations. In this dialogue, you tell me what your new choices are, and I offer observations on ways to manifest that. What is it you now choose with regard to the current relationship between people and nations on your planet? I'll use your words. If I had my way, I would choose for us to get to a place of love and concern for all humankind. Given that choice, I observe that what would work would be the formation of a new world political community, with each nation state having an equal say in the world's affairs and an equal proportionate share of the world's resources. It'll never work. The haves will never surrender their sovereignty, wealth, and resources to the have-nots. And, argumentatively, why should they? Because it is in their best interest. They don't see that, and I'm not sure I do. If you could add billions of dollars a year to your nation's economy, dollars which could be spent to feed the hungry, clothe the needy, house the poor, and bring security to the elderly, provide better health care, and produce a dignified standard of living for all, wouldn't that be in your nation's best interest? Well, in America, there are those who would argue that it would help the poor at the expense of the rich and of the middle-class income taxpayer. Meanwhile, the country continues to go to hell, crime ravages the nation, inflation robs the people of their life savings, unemployment skyrockets, the government grows bigger and fatter, and in school, they're handing out condoms. You sound like radio talk show. You sound like a radio talk show. Well, these are the concerns of many Americans. Then they are short-sighted. Do you not see that if billions of dollars a year, that's millions a month, hundreds and hundreds of thousands a week, unheard of amounts each day, could be sunk back into your system, that if you could use these monies to feed your hungry, clothe your needy, house your poor, and bring security to your elderly, and provide health care and dignity to all, the causes of crime would be lost forever? Do you not see that new jobs would mushroom as dollars were pumped back into your economy? That is your own government could even be reduced because it would have less to do? I suppose some of that could happen. I can't imagine government ever getting smaller. But just where are these millions and billions going to come from? Taxes imposed by your new world government? More taking from those who've worked to get it, to give to those who won't stand upon their own 2 feet and go after it? Is that how you frame it? No, but it is how a great many people see it, and I wanted to fairly state their view. Well, I'd like to talk about that later. Right now, I don't want to get off track, but I want to come back to that later. Great. But you've asked where these new dollars would come from. Well, they would not have to come from any new taxes imposed by the New World community, although members of the community, individualized citizens, would want, under an enlightened governance, to send 10% of their income to provide for society's needs as a whole. Nor would they come from new taxes imposed by any local government. In fact, some local governments would surely be able to reduce taxes. All of these benefits would result from the simple restructuring of your world view, the simpler reordering of your world's political configuration. How? The money you save from building defense systems and attack weapons. Oh, I get it. You want us to close down the military. Not just you, everybody in the world. But not close down your military, simply reduce it drastically. Internal order would be your only need. You could strengthen local police, something you say you want. to do, but cry each year at budget time that you cannot do. At the same time, dramatically reducing your spending on weapons of war and preparations for war, that is, offensive and defensive weapons of mass destruction. First, I think your figures exaggerate how much could be saved by doing that. Second, I don't think you'll ever convince people they should give up their ability to defend themselves. Let's look at the numbers. Presently, it is March 25th, 1994, as we write this. The world's governments spend about $1 trillion a year for military purposes. That's $1 million a minute worldwide. The nations that are spending the most could redirect the most to their other priorities mentioned. So larger, richer nations would see it in their best interests to do so if they thought it was possible. But larger, richer nations cannot imagine going defenseless, for they fear aggression and attack from the nations which envy them and want what they have. There are two ways to eliminate this threat. One, share enough of the world's total wealth and resources with all of the world's people so that no one will want and need what someone else has, and everyone may live in dignity and remove themselves from fear. Two, create a system for the resolution of differences that eliminates the need for war and even the possibility of it. The people of the world would probably never do this. They already have. They have? Yes. There is a great experiment now going on in your world in just this sort of political order. That experiment is called the United States of America, which you said was failing miserably. It is. It has very far to go before it could be called a success. As I promised earlier, I'll be talking about this and the attitudes which are now preventing it later. Still, it is the best experiment going. It is, as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst system, he announced, except all others. Your nation was the first to take a loose confederation of individual states and successfully unite them into a cohesive group, each submitting to one central authority. At the time, none of the states wanted to do this, and each resisted mightily, fearing the loss of its individual greatness and claiming that such a union would not serve its best interests. It may be instructive to understand just what was going on with these individual states at the time. While they had joined together in a loose confederation, there was no real U.S. government and hence no power to enforce the Articles of Confederation to which the states had agreed. States were conducting their own foreign affairs, several reaching private agreements on trade and other matters with France, Spain, and England and other countries. States traded with each other as well, and although their Articles of Confederation forbade it, some states added tariffs to the goods shipped in from other states, just as they did for goods from across the ocean. Merchants had no choice but to pay at the harbor if they wanted to buy or sell their goods, there being no central authority, although there was a written agreement to prohibit such taxing. The individual states also fought wars with each other. Each state considered its militia a standing army. 9 states had their own navies, and "Don't tread on me" could have been the official motto of every state in the Confederation. Over half of the states were even printing their own money, although the Confederation had agreed that doing so would also be illegal. In short, your own original states, though joined together under the Articles of the Confederation, were acting exactly as independent nations do today. Although they could see that the agreements of their confederation, such as the granting to Congress the sole authority to coin money, were not working, they staunchly resisted creating and submitting to a central authority that could enforce these agreements and put some teeth into them. Yet in time, a few progressive leaders began to prevail. They convinced the rank and file that there was more to be gained by creating such a new federation than they would ever lose. Merchants would save money and increase profits because individual states could no longer tax each other's goods. Governments would save money and have more to put into programs and services that truly help people because resources would not have to be used to protect individual states from each other. The people would have greater security and safety and greater prosperity, too, by cooperating with, rather than fighting with, each other. Far from losing their greatness, each state could become greater still. And that, of course, is exactly what has happened. The same could be made to happen with the 160 nation states in the world today if they were to join together in a united federation. It could mean an end to war. How so? There would still be disagreements. So long as humans remain attached to outer things, that is true. There is a way to truly eliminate war and all experience of unrest and lack of peace, but that is a spiritual solution. We are here exploring a geopolitical one. Actually, the trick is to combine the two. Spiritual truth must be lived in practical life to change everyday experience. Unlike this, until this change occurs, there would still be disagreements, you are right. Yet there need not be wars. There need not be killing. Are there wars between California and Oregon over water rights? Between Maryland and Virginia over fishing? Between Wisconsin and Illinois, Ohio and Massachusetts? No. And why not? Have not various disputes and differences arisen between them? Through the years, I suppose so. You can bet on it. But these individual states have voluntarily agreed, it was a simple voluntary agreement, to abide by certain laws and abide by certain compromises on matters common to them, while retaining the right to pass separate statutes on matters relating to each individually. And when disputes between states do arise due to differing interpretations of the federal law, or someone simply breaking that law, the matter is taken to a court, which has been granted the authority, that is, given the authority by the states, to resolve the dispute. And if the current body of law does not provide a precedent or a means by which the matter can be brought through the courts to a satisfactory resolution, the states and the people in them send their representatives to a central government to try to create agreement on new laws that would produce a satisfactory circumstance, or, at the very least, a reasonable compromise. This is how your federation works: a system of laws, a system of courts empowered by you to interpret those laws, and a justice system backed by armed might, if needed, to enforce the decisions of those courts. Although no one could argue that that system doesn't need improving, this political concoction has worked for more than 200 years. There is no reason to doubt that the same recipe will work between nation states as well. If this is so simple, why hasn't it been tried? It has. Your League of Nations was an early attempt. The United Nations is the latest. Yet one failed and the other has been only minimally effective because, like the 13 states of America's original confederation, the member nation states, particularly the most powerful, are afraid they have more to lose than to gain from the reconfiguration. That is because the people of power are more concerned with holding on to their power than with improving the quality of life for all people. The haves know that such a world federation would inevitably produce more for the have-nots, but the haves believe this would come at their expense, and they're giving up nothing. Isn't their fear justified, and is wanting to hold on to what you have so long struggled for unreasonable? First, it is not necessarily true that to give more to those who now hunger and thirst and live without shelter, others must give up their abundance. As I have pointed out, all you would have to do is take the, I can't read this number, and it's an enormous number, $1 billion, I don't know, dollars a year spent annually worldwide for military purposes and shift that to humanitarian purposes, and you would have solved the problem without spending an additional penny or shifting any of the wealth from where it now resides to where it does not. Of course, it could be argued that those international conglomerates whose profits come from war and tools for war would be losers, as would their employees and all those whose abundance is derived from the world's conflict consciousness. But perhaps your source of abundance is misplaced. If one has to depend on the world living in strife in order for one to survive, perhaps this dependence explains why your world resists any attempt to create a structure for lasting peace. As for the second part of your question, wanting to hold on to what you have struggled so long to acquire as an individual or as a nation is not unreasonable if you come from an outside world consciousness. A what? If you derive your life's greatest happiness from experiences obtainable only in the outside world, the physical world outside yourself, you will never want to give up an ounce of all that you have piled up as a person and as a nation to make you happy. As long as those who have not seen their unhappiness tied to the lack of material things, I have to read that again, I'm sorry. And as long as those who have not see their unhappiness tied to the lack of material things, they too will get caught up in the trap. They will constantly want what you have got, and you will constantly refuse to share it. That is why I said earlier that there is a way to truly eliminate war and all experience of unrest and lack of peace, but this is a spiritual solution. Ultimately, every geopolitical problem, just as every personal problem, breaks down to a spiritual problem. All of life is spiritual, and therefore, all of life's problems are spiritually based and spiritually solved. Wars are created on your planet because somebody has to do something, and that somebody else wants. This is what causes someone to do something that somebody else does not want them to do. All conflict arises from misplaced desire. The only peace in all the world that is sustaining is internal peace. Let each person find peace within. When you find peace within, you also find that you can do without. This means simply that you no longer need the things of your outside world. Not needing is a great freedom. It frees you first from fear. Fear that there is something you won't have. Fear that there is something you have that you will lose. And fear that without a certain thing, you won't be happy. Secondly, not needing frees you from anger. Anger is fear announced. When you have nothing to fear, you have nothing over which to be angry. You are not angry when you don't get what you want, because your wanting it was simply a preference, not a necessity. You therefore have no fear associated with the possibility of not getting it, hence no anger. You are not angry when you see others doing what you don't want them to do, because you do not need them to do or not do any particular thing, hence no anger. You are not angry when someone is unkind because you have no need for them to be kind. You have no anger when someone is unloving because you have no need for them to love you. You have no anger when someone is cruel or hurtful or seeks to damage you, for you have no need for them to behave any other way, and you are clear that you cannot be damaged. You do not even have anger should someone seek to take your life, because you do not fear death. When fear is taken from you, all else can be taken from you, and you will not be angry. You know inwardly, intuitively, that everything you've created can be created again, or more importantly, that it doesn't matter. When you find inner peace, neither the presence nor the absence of any person, place, or thing, condition, circumstance, or situation can be the creator of your state of mind or the cause of your experience of being. This does not mean that you reject all things of the body. Far from it. You experience being fully in your body and the delights of that as you never have before. Yet your involvement with things of the body will be voluntary, not mandatory. You will experience bodily sensations because you choose to, not because you are required to in order to feel happy or to justify sadness. This one simple change, seeking and finding peace within, could, were it undertaken by everyone, end all wars, eliminate conflict, prevent injustice, and bring the world to everlasting peace. There is no formula necessary or possible. There is no other formula necessary or possible. World peace is a personal thing. What is needed is not a change of circumstance, but a change of consciousness. How can we find inner peace when we are hungry? Be at the place of serenity when we thirst. Remain calm when we are wet and cold and without shelter, or avoid anger when our loved ones are dying without cause. You speak so poetically, but is poetry practical? Does it have anything to say to the mother in Ethiopia who watched her emaciated child die for lack of one slice of bread? The man in Central America who feels a bullet rip his body because he tried to stop an army from taking over his village? And what does your poetry say to the woman in Brooklyn raped 8 times by a gang? Or the family of 6 in Ireland blown away by a terrorist bomb planted in a church on a Sunday morning? This is difficult to hear, but I tell you this: there is perfection in everything. Strive to see the perfection. This is the change of consciousness of which I speak. Need nothing. Desire everything. Choose what shows up. Feel your feelings, cry your cries, laugh your laughs, honor your truth. Yet when all the emotion is gone, be still and know that I am God. In other words, in the midst of the greatest tragedy, see the glory of the process. Even as you die with a bullet through your chest, even as you are being gang raped. Now this sounds like such an impossible thing to do. Yet when you move to God consciousness, you can do it. You don't have to do it, of course. It depends on how you wish to experience the moment. In a moment of great tragedy, the challenge always is to quiet the mind and move deep within the soul. You automatically do this when you have no control over it. Have you ever talked with a person who accidentally ran a car off a bridge, or found himself facing a gun, or nearly drowned? Often they will tell you that time slowed way down, that they were overcome by a curious calm, that there was no fear at all. Fear not, for I am with you. That is what poetry has to say to the person facing tragedy. In your darkest hour, I will be your light. In your blackest moment, I will be your consolation. In your most difficult and trying time, I will be your strength. Therefore, have faith, for I am your shepherd, and you shall not want. I will cause you to lie down in green pastures. I will lead you beside still waters. I will restore your soul and lead you in the paths of righteousness for my name's sake. And yea, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you will fear no evil, for I am with you. My rod and my staff will comfort you. I am preparing a table before you in the presence of your enemies. I shall anoint your head with oil. Your cup will run over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life, and you will dwell in my house and in my heart forever. Done.
Wow. That is a very powerful chapter. And I have goosebumps several times. And some of it is questions like, how are we going to get everybody to find internal peace? One of the things I was thinking, hearing all the reading, is that what Einstein says about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I was also thinking that chapter 11 would be a great thing to leave here and there for Awakening Day in November. And I don't know, does anybody else want to jump in and
I don't know if anybody else gets scared or discouraged. I know I do. The fact that this was written over 20 years ago and nothing has changed just scares me to death. And I know that's not a good thing to say, but I mean, really, it does frighten me for my grandchildren and their children. And, I just don't know if there's going to be anything left for them. Much less than anything they would really want to have.
That's an interesting observation. That's an interesting, I don't know if it can be, could you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess 20 years is really like the blink of an eye in terms of the, age of life or the age of humanity. But
I know that's,
what?
I said, I know that.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, this whole book for me has been problematic since we started reading it, because I honestly don't know if I believe that it's possible to make these changes, period. I mean, so that's going to make what you said seem mild in comparison, but I'm being honest.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
The fact that we've seen so little change, and I know 20 years is not much for God, but it's a lot for people that live on the earth. I mean, 20 years is 2 decades. For us, that's a long time, even if 60 is the new 40.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'd like to add something if I could. Can you hear me?
yes?
Yes.
Oh, you can. Good. As a Canadian, I've been very amazed at how our Prime Minister is actually able to sign a trade agreement with the European Union, which was vetoed by a teeny tiny part of Belgium, that the 28 countries of the EU could not ratify this agreement because of that little province in Belgium. So because this agreement actually succeeded, I was very encouraged by what God's saying. And it was touch and go. Our Prime Minister was supposed to go there Thursday, but he went there today and his plane had engine trouble. So he got there late, But whatever it is, these things, these miracles are happening, and I prefer to be optimistic.
That's good. I am glad to hear about that. And it does seem to me that Canada has a pretty awesome prime minister right now. So that is good.
Thank you. We're very proud of him.
Yeah. We're kind of proud of ours too. Some of us are anyway.
Yep. I think, too, let's look, and I'm going to call on you, Brenna, in just a second. I think, too, when we, for the world to see the United States elect a black president was one of the most joyful moments of my life, because that's come a long way from where this country has been with race relations. And I think maybe if we would get ourselves involved in the exercise of, and I totally understand what you're saying, Angela, about the fear thing and worrying about what's going to be here for our children. But if we can pick out those things that have happened for the positive and say there is change coming. And for those of you that listened last week to Global Oneness Day, Bruce Lipton, who's a scientist, said he's not going to get all shaken up about all the negativity. He said he feels really that sometimes for things to come together, things have to fall apart, which is not necessarily what any of us want to hear. But anyway, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to give Brenna. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm painting my house today, but I just wanted to say that when I first read that from Neil, this part particular, that was 10 years ago, and I was in a lot of a different place. I was in a different place. And in 10 years in my own life, amazing things have happened. And I mean, I know that's like kind of taking it into a person-centric view, but I think it's those micro changes that start to reflect on a macro level when when more people sort of tend to start waking up. So the change may seem slow, but like what I forget who was talking about, Justin Trudeau, who I have a tiny little crush on, by the way. But like when we start seeing those things, even though they're small, they are making a difference. And I think humanity had gotten to a place of such brutality and such disgusting behaviors that it is really unburying ourselves, and it's not going to be an overnight change. It's going to be a long time. And if we even think in terms of like climate change, like my uncle and I were just having this conversation because he's a scientist, and we've created this situation where it could take 500 to 1,000 years to undo on our planet. So we've done some things, and there's some responsibility that needs to be taken place, but it doesn't mean that we're not headed in the right direction, if that makes sense.
I think it does, and I also think, thank you, Brenna. One of the let's see what Anne says here from the or Linda says, okay. Thank you for giving me that information, Linda. Anne says, from chaos comes order, but I'm stumped by what is happening now, when as a nation we have put two of the most unqualified people to lead our nation, in my opinion. And there's nobody more than me that cannot wait for this election cycle to be over. It's stressful, but if I keep telling myself what I mentioned before about Bruce Lipton, is that sometimes things do have to fall apart, and I'm not hoping they do, trust me. But if we can be focused on the good changes that are happening around the world, I think that we can, not like living in a bubble where there's nothing wrong going on, but I think if we can, like, even on the Evolution Revolution page, have a part that says, give me some good news, give me some good news. Give me a sign that things are changing. And just like Brenna was saying about, it may take 1,000 years for us to correct the course for global climate change. Somehow or another, we need to rise above the muck, which is, I'm not saying I do this all the time myself, but rise above the muck and be in that state of gratitude for what we do have and where we are going. And I agree with what you said, Michelle, too. This book has been hard for me because I want to think, that these things are going to happen, and who knows? God knows. Yes, Linda.
I love this book. It just, for me, it totally fills me with hope. And I think the things that we do is have faith and to get out of resistance. One of the things that the mistakes that we make as human beings is we look around us and we say, well, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like that those people are doing this. I don't like that they're doing that. And part of the lesson, I think, is to come back into ourselves and mind our own business, because a lot of it is really not for us. At least in my experience of God and life, it's about my God and my relationship with God. And when I get that right, the rest of it will straighten out. You know, there's another saying, we change the world by changing ourselves, or when the world changes. And I really believe that we're actually on a trajectory. I mean, yes, what we see in the third dimension is chaos, and it's horrible. And like with North Dakota, it's enough to just make all of us want to just get on a plane and go there. And yet, and so we have to, from where we are, hold the faith that the universe has a grander plan, and God has a grander plan than we can see, than even than we can imagine. And yeah, it's been 20 years, but you know what? I was marching around in the 60s, so it's been more than 20 years for me. And although in some ways I feel like we're in worse shape than we were in the 60s, at the same time, I know that we're not. I know that we've made progress. And I mean, look at us. We're all sitting here on a Zoom thing, you know, talking to each other. That's progress. Being able to connect with like-minded people all around the world, that's part of this evolution that we're in. And so, you know, just all I can say is don't despair. Stay in that place of joy and hope, and find what makes you feel joyful, and work on that. And if we were to all do that, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's ugly, but it's beautiful at the same time.
Well, you know, I agree with what you said, and I think that none of us are at peace 24/7. At least I'm not. But I'm much better about navigating that way when I'm starting to stress out about, you know, anything. I'm just like, wait a minute, big picture of things. Even when we were reading in this chapter, you know, losing, like when I lost my parents, and I remember thinking, and I didn't lose them together, but each time, and I've lost 3 parents, I had this incredible, the slow motion thing kind of plays into it, but all my senses were heightened. I mean, flowers were brighter, the trees were greener, the birds it was incredible. And I remember thinking to myself, why does it have to come to something like a loss for me to go, you know? But maybe that's part of what God's saying here, is that I'm going to be there with you. You know, I'm not going to let you fall flat. Now, I want to add something too that Brenna said, and it was to a or something that somebody said, and I wasn't paying attention. But she says, okay, where did it go? Love that. Sometimes people are experiencing things for something that serves their soul and not necessarily for us to sort out. And I love that too, because it's like, okay, I don't need to try to sort this whole thing out. And then Anne comes back in and says, as far as encouragement, remember perception, what we are asking for, we are observing coming to be. It just has its own timing, not ours. Surrender or conceding is not the same as quitting or giving up. This may be why some people have a difficult time with surrender. A spiritual warrior's goal is to win the war. That does not mean every battle will end in victory. When your heart is not feeling guided because its eye is blinded by darkness or by light, that is irrelevant. You must wait in either case till you have a clear vision to see where you are being called to go next. The answer always comes when you ask deeply and listen. And let's see, I just lost the place. Deeply and listen. And allow your heartstrings to resonate in synchronicity with where harmony lies. When Jesus was most troubled in the time of his greatest despair, it is said that he went into the garden alone to be with God. Thank you, Anne. That was beautifully stated. Does somebody else want to come in?
Hi, sorry I was late coming on, but
Hi, Christine.
I was on another call. But we have to view our life, all of life, from a lens of innocence, because it is innocent. Life is innocence, and our innocence got programmed very early to believe a lot of lies. To just believe that we're somehow guilty and there's such a thing as right and wrong and good and bad, and it's just the innocence believing things that aren't true. And so I think my job is to love my innocence free of every condition that it ever took on. And that's my only job here.
Beautifully said again. And I think it's in those times of turmoil, like I do this back and forth thing right now here in our country with the election. It's like, am I going to be able to deal with a President Trump? I'm just going to be straightforward. And then I think, well, if he's elected president, I don't really have a choice unless I want to get on horseback and get up there to Canada. But then I think, well, what if there's problems if the person I do want to vote for ends up having lots of troubles? And you know what? That is how we can drive ourselves insane, because it's really out of my control outside of me making sure I get out there and vote. Over.
Absolutely. And, this is where the faith comes in the eternal now moment, right? It's, just stay in the moment that is and try and be open-hearted as best you can in each and every moment. And then, life is a miracle. And just so you know, I do the gene keys, and many of you do know that, but each human being has 11 gene keys, and I share 6 of Donald Trump's. Not in the same spaces, but so there you go.
I'm sorry.
Even Donald Trump is innocent.
Yeah.
He's misguided. I saw Deepak, he was on one of the shows, and he said that Donald's stuck in his root chakra.
That's an interesting place for it to be stuck.
Yeah.
Give it his hairdo.
Yeah.
That wasn't all he said either. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
We're one with him. If you really want to give yourself a headache, meditate on that. We're really one. He's not separate from us.
He is not.
And
he is absolutely not.
What he wants in us is, when I learned that, I went through a compassion process just this week because I was really being triggered by Mitch McConnell and John McCain. Every time they got on the TV, I could not stay harmonious. I couldn't stay. I kept losing it. And so my facilitation did a process, and come to find out, the button that they were pushing in me with my parents and the way my parents used to lie when I was little. And that is such a convoluted thread to have been able to pull out. And yet, what it shows me and confirms for me is that anytime we're feeling triggered by something in the external world, it's about us. It's not about them.
That's a good point.
You're here, Linda.
Yep, that's a very good point. We are coming up on the end of the hour, and there might be worthy of more discussion on this, because this, for me, was a particularly not difficult to understand, but just, oh dear God, can we ever get there? And you know, I think Matt Kahn is the one that says, "Whatever arises, love that."
Yes, that's his book.
And you know, that's a trick.
Well, that's loving your innocence free of all the conditions. That's
Right.
exactly what that is. Nanette, do we have a Zoom call at 5 today?
For
Because in
what?
my email it said.
Oh no, it was the wrong time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad everybody figured out it was not at 5 o'clock tonight.
okay. I was wondering.
Yeah, no, I was doing it in a hurry, and I was making dinner with my granddaughter, and but anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody. As usual, I always enjoy the conversation that comes from this group.
Me
And
too.
it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's balancing. And, you know, like when one person says one thing that seems a little bit scary, and then somebody else says something that might seem a little bit scary, but it puts the human, that innocence, whatever you want to call it, puts it all back into us, so that we don't have to walk around going, you know, because nobody wants to live that way. And I just want to remind everybody to keep Neil in your prayers on Tuesday. I'm sure I will put up a post. And whenever I hear whatever I hear, as soon as I hear, and as soon as I'm told that it's okay to, you know, to try to figure this out, and to bring forth the good news that we're hoping for, I will do that. And I really do love you all, and I really appreciate it. And next Sunday, and happy Halloween to all those trick-or-treaters.
Yes.
Next Sunday. Love y'all.
That's the
Okay.
life and Scorpio moon.
All right. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Love you.
Awesome. Bye-bye.